Kathleen, roll call.
Commissioner Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Seifert.
Here.
Commissioner White O'Neill. Chair Dickerson.
I am here. Public comment period. Each member of the audience may address the commission on any subject within the commission's business. Each member of the audience and each subject is limited to discussion of 3 minutes or is otherwise directed by the chair, and these are for items not on the agenda.
Those aren't for items on the agenda, I believe. We're not having any public hearings.
What's that?
We're not having any public hearings, so that would be for all items on the agenda.
Oh, all right. Then it'll be for all items. No, all right. Then let us roll right down to number 1, appointment of 2 planning commissioners to...
I apologize, it does say public hearings.
No.
My mistake, but these aren't really public hearings. So that's why I said that. I apologize.
These aren't public hearings?
This is just a special meeting?
They're not required to be public hearings.
Okay.
It's just on the agenda that way.
Okay.
If you would, it says that. I apologize for the confusion. I didn't read close enough. I need to keep my glasses on. I apologize. If you wish to have people speak on the items as you consider them, that's certainly your
Okay.
ability to do so.
All right. It's my ability to do so. We'll see. Number 1, appointment of 2 planning commissioners to Art Committee. Man, you were eating up time, Philip. We were supposed to be in and out of here. Cutting into Logan's drinking time. I mean, I tell you, man. Why don't we hear from...
Sure, I can jump in on that. Ryan Hostetter, Planning Manager. Thank you, everybody, for accommodating the special meeting in order to accomplish these couple items. As the City Council, specifically on item 1 here on your agenda, the City Council asked that the Planning Commission appoint 2 members to an art committee, and this is a result of a hearing before the City Council on October 3rd where Rec and Parks Department discussed the Public Art Master Plan, and those minutes have been provided for information for anybody here. Essentially, at the end of the day, the council chose what was called option 3, which was to continue discussion of the Art Master Plan and to appoint members of the Planning Commission. They added 2 members of the development community, a member from Rec and Parks, and let's see, all in all, it ended up being a 7-person committee. So what we're here today for is to allow your commission to appoint those 2 members before the end of the year. So that is the item before you.
Great. All right. Do we have any comments from... No? Okay. Anything from the audience? No? All right. Everyone's just here to observe. That's fine. Who do we want? I guess that's this thing. I've been on the art thing, so I guess I could be on it again for public or for things. So I guess I could put myself forward for one of those slots.
Commissioner Lopez, would you consider the other slot?
Sure.
I would like to make a quick comment. Ms. White O'Neill is here. We did have a little bit of an issue with the art community, and I think it was unfair. But you recall that you had to recuse yourself. I wonder if we should be putting people on who do not have any development ties. And the reason why is because developers already have 2 people on this committee. And so I think that it gives a very weighted thing, at least the impression of it, that there might be a weighted thing towards developers, since there actually are nobody from the art community is on that committee. And so I'm wondering whether we ought to send people who do not have any ties to the development community or do business with. And that's just a comment I had in the back of my mind. So
May I speak?
Absolutely.
I would disagree. My only thing, as for Commissioner Lopez, is I think that this isn't an issue of whether we've discussed art, and I think that everybody has decided that we all love art and we all want art. It's more of a financial situation. It's how are we going to get the money? Where is it going to come from? And, my whole thing with the art community was at the study session, I suggested that they look into alternatives for their fundraising, which they refused to do and wanted to go with the developer tax, and that's what they stuck with. And then the city council shot them down. So that was my whole thing, is that they need someone in there that isn't got heartstrings to the art community. They have to have a sense of how to finance this thing, because we all want the art. No one's argued that. But it's the finance that it is. So I don't think it's a matter of whether you're a developer or an artist or a whatever anyone else does. I think it's just a matter of good common sense, good financial responsibility, and how that we can make sure that this thing gets funded in a way that suits the whole community.
You don't think that there's going to be some impression that it's too weighted in people who do business in the development community? I mean, the whole point of whether or not there's a conflict of interest is oftentimes it's a matter of what the impression is, not necessarily the reality of. And as I said, if we end up that being heavily weighted towards the development community or people who do business with the development community, we might give the impression that has a louder voice. And I'm just concerned at what the community might generally feel, and specifically the art community, those guys, obviously.
Well, you could also argue the opposite, that if we put other people on there that were with the art community, we would be weighting it that way. I think as commissioners, we've all taken a vow to do our best for this community and to look at things in a perspective of the community at stake, not as individuals. So I think we've all met that goal. I recused myself not because of what I didn't think that I could handle the situation. I was upset with the actual people behind the movement. I think I could still even be one that could figure out how to financially do this. I don't want the position, but I think any one of us is capable of seeing past whatever their position in life is and doing the best for the community. I think we've proved that by just being up here, and I don't think that perception from the art community is correct, if that's what you're thinking. I mean, I think we're very capable of being non-biased.
Okay. All right, fair enough. And you would be good? No? You're good with it? Okay, that's fine. In that case, and since Ms. White O'Neill is here, Kelly, would you be interested in being on that committee as well? I would. Okay. Then why don't we hear a nomination?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Tom Lopez for that position.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And I'd like to go ahead and nominate Commissioner Kelly White O'Neill.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There we go. And we move on to number 2, mere 12 minutes. Discuss amending Planning Commission meeting start time to 5:30 p.m. beginning in 2018. Ryan?
Sure. So your commission had requested we look at adding this for discussion for next year to mimic the start time essentially of the city council and see if there was any public input regarding this. So we thought we could schedule it with this item today to discuss and get any public input, whether or not this might be a good or difficulty for the community, and allow your commission to look to choose starting at 5:30 if you so choose for beginning in 2018.
Okay. Have we actually had any input from anybody regarding this?
We haven't heard anything to date. However, we can see that there's a couple people in the audience, and I don't know if anybody's here to speak on that.
No,
but-
actually, there's only one now.
Yeah.
With each agenda item, we lose a person.
Yes. Lost half the audience.
That's right. 50% decrease.
I'd like to speak to that. For me, it'd be
ma'am.
difficult to start at 5:30 because I do end at work, 5. It'd be difficult to be here right at 5:30. So therefore, I,
Okay.
would prefer the 6:30 time.
Okay.
That we remain. Also, I see why the city council would need to start a little earlier. They do have way more agenda items than we do. And so they sometimes end later. We generally don't have that many agenda items.
Okay. Mr. Seifert?
Thank you, Chair. I would prefer 5:30, but I do realize that I am just one person on this committee. I would be willing to stay at 6:30 or go to 5:30. I don't want to put a burden on any of my fellow commissioners, so I would prefer 5:30, but I could certainly see that there would be a reason not to change it.
Okay. Ms. White O'Neill?
My personal preference is to keep it at 6:30. It is easier for me to do 6:30, but I can be flexible and can accommodate if we need to move it to 5:30.
Mr. Lopez?
Mr. Chairman, I'm flexible as well. 5:30 sounds good, but if it's going to put a burden on fellow commissioners, I'd rather also stay at 6:30. But again, whatever the consensus is going to be.
In my opinion, it is basically the same thing. I think I would have rather stayed at 6:30, but I could have been flexible enough to move my things around to on Wednesdays to 5:30. But we already have two commissioners that that would seem to be more of a burden. So I would rather keep it at, I guess, 6:30 because of that burden. Okay. So.
Do we need a motion?
Are you sure?
Is a compromise time of 6? Is that an option? Does that help anybody? Not really.
No.
I think if we're going to move it, we either move it one way or we keep it the same.
Okay.
I think so. All right.
I would make a motion that we keep it at 6:30.
Second.
But
No change.
Because we're not changing
not
anything.
changing
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, we're not changing anything.
I'm making a motion that I don't make a motion.
And you have just as much enthusiasm I can see on either of them. All right, the motion is not presented, and therefore we keep it at 6:30. Sorry, I did bring it up.
I think we're done.
Oh no, we got one
Commissioner
more.
Seifert pays her traffic tickets, speeding ticket to get here.
Those can be.
And when they revoke my license after the third one, I'll need a lawyer.
Oh, that's right.
Number 3, League of California Cities Planning Commissioners Academy. Ryan, I think you're up yet again.
Yes, I'm up again. So we wanted to get this early on our calendars for those that are able to make it. I've spoken with Sandy, who is Sandy Control of our office, who's assisting with coordinating. And she had mentioned that we believe Commissioner White O'Neill is the only one that has not attended this training yet. So it's up to the commission how many folks you want to send, but it's during this time, April 4th through 6th, and work through Sandy on coordinating the registration and your schedules and whether or not you choose to go. You don't need to make any decisions today. It's just mark your calendars.
Okay. Is that something, Kelly, that you'd be interested in going?
I'd like to go. As of right now, my work calendar is clear. Is it in LA again?
We don't have the location yet. They haven't given us that. I just went this morning
It's
to
super
check.
secret.
Yeah.
Top secret.
That's undisclosed. That's right. We wander around California.
They haven't planned it yet.
They haven't planned it.
They're still on the holiday.
Yeah.
Does any other commissioner wish to go a second time?
I would like to go.
You would? Okay. No? Okay. Then ideally, why don't we look towards these two going?
Sure.
And they'll get back to you as far as their schedule and doing that.
Great. We'll coordinate. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to give you, before you adjourn, just a quick look out into January and agendas and just a quick update if now's the time.
Okay. So is this, are we moving, is this report on city council actions and oral reports? Is that sort of thing? Okie dokie.
So on city council actions, the main item of note is the ADU ordinance. It's going for its second reading next week before the city council was discussed at the end of November. And there was a lively discussion, and the council directed staff to do some research and the city attorney's office to do some research on any additional regulations that we're able to apply and to ADUs. So they're very concerned with ADUs and the impacts that they will bring onto the neighborhoods and the character of the neighborhoods, and essentially turning R1 neighborhoods into multifamily neighborhoods. So there was a lot of discussion about that concern. So beyond that, we're going to bring back some research we did on if there's anything else that we can do, and so far we don't think so. It's pretty clear from the state that the state really wants these to be a solid tool for providing affordable housing, and are telling jurisdictions you need to do this with limited regulations. So we're going to bring that back to them next week for the second reading. Okay. So that would be I don't have any other council updates, and I'm looking to Phil to see if I'm missing anything or if there's any other.
I would just add that the council reinstated the owner occupancy requirement that the Planning Commission had requested be removed. So right now the ordinance that's before the council is the same as it was presented to you. And then, and Ryan's correct, we were asked to look specifically at the covered parking for replacement of like a garage conversion. That was something that council expressed interest in, but the city attorney recommended that they not put that in the ordinance right now, that if our office researched it and found a way to make it happen, that we could modify it before the second before the second reading, and then continue it to a second reading. But as Ryan said, I don't think that's going to happen. So we're going to probably recommend that they just go forward with the second reading as the ordinance was originally presented to you.
So the covered parking just was not able to fly?
It's a difficult argument to make based on the state's stated goals of the ordinance and the language. Slightly ambiguous, but I think 8 times out of 10 a court's going to read it the way that the state's interpreted it. So it's a legally risky thing to do.
That was just with I mean, I know that the ordinance said that you don't have to require covered parking, but I thought there was a caveat in there about if you took the garage, that you could require covered parking, no?
No, I don't believe so. And then there was the issue of location to public transit and all that, which is also an issue. So we're taking the position that has to be a specific type of public transit. Like the only thing in the city that would qualify is the
transit
center. State wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but that's a different issue. We are looking into, I mean, I pretty much looked into it. I'm preparing to notify the powers that be.
When you issue the city council agenda, when we get those emails, will the new, it's not new, but will a fresh printout of the ADU ordinance be available to read? I know, I guess it didn't technically change, but is it going to be?
In the second reading, we get rid of there's no strikeout. We get rid of the redlining and everything, and it'll look like it's going to look when it goes into the books.
Great, and that'll come out, that
will come out
with the agenda.
With the agenda packet,
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Further questions? Further items?
Not for City Council, but for your commission, future Planning Commission items. We're looking towards penciling in a study session for January 18th. We have potentially 2 projects now that we're going to look to scheduling on that date. We have an apartment project, the East New Love Apartments, and we have a mixed-use project on Main Street, The Kitchen. So we're looking at bringing those to a study session. on January 18th. And as well on, excuse me, February 7th for a hearing item, we're looking at bringing the Cracker Barrel restaurant as a part of Enos Ranch for hearing for your review and approval potentially on February 7th. So we have those, and then on February 8th, we're looking at a study session to discuss our WELO, our Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, to bring it into compliance with state law, and we want to bring that and bring it to study session for February 8th. We know you've had some discussion in the past on that, and we'd like to really just look at getting the ordinance just so it complies with state regulations. So we're going to discuss that on February 8th. And also, you're familiar with the ordinance related to time extensions and time frames of permits. So we want to bring that back to study session February 8th to provide a refresher. And I can provide a presentation on that at that hearing, or that study session, excuse me. And those are my updates.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Seifert?
Not having to do with that?
Not having to do with that.
The Dr. Seuss tree has been taken down. So somebody listened and they cut it down.
But not hauled off, is my understanding.
Some of it isn't hauled off, but it is gone. So the entrance to the city is looking a little better. We'll work on the weed abatement next. Thank you.
Can I ask you? I did ask you this question. Do you know that was it cut down or did it just fall over?
No, it didn't fall over.
Okay.
There's definite cut marks. It was ready to fall over, but it definitely got cut. But that whole thing just needs to be cleaned up. So that's my opinion.
I did have one question. Where are we at with the monument for the entrance to the city on the north end of town? It seemed like there was work being done, and then everyone kind of packed up and had lunch and went away and never came back.
Like contractors
I can look into
like
that
to
and
do.
Research that and get back to your commission on that. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll talk to the planners working on that.
Okay. Just
yes, sir.
My 2 cents worth. Sometimes you have to wait for the masonry to dry before you're able to coat it with something, if that's their plan.
Yeah. It's been more than 30 days, though, and I thought it would be a 28-day.
I'm just saying that it could be that they had some waiting period or drying period. I don't know, but it does seem to have stopped.
I just had a question about scheduling. So our next planning commission is scheduled for January 17th? Or are we
public hearing?
Public hearing, yeah. Or nothing on the 3rd?
So we don't have items ready for the 3rd or the 4th study session or the January 17th hearing. We don't have items ready for those dates yet.
So nothing but they haven't been canceled.
That's right.
We're just waiting. Okay,
right.
Fine.
How about December?
Nothing.
We're done.
No, December is done.
Yep.
Yes.
This was it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else from anyone else? All right, this well-oiled machine is adjourned, and we'll see everyone in January. Merry Christmas, all.